All right, guys, what's up? It's good to see everybody here at the main event, third annual main event. So glad you all are here. If you're just listening, because this, guys, will be a podcast, so if you're just listening, you're probably going to hear some background noise. That's because there's 100 of us men here on our property in Maine doing this main event thing, having a weekend, getting to know each other and help each other out. So,
hell yeah.
Kip, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
We usually do this via Zoom, so doing it here is a little different. It's better Zoom. I don't have to see you or sit next to you or any of this stuff.
Well, I actually take your like the Zoom screen where I see you, and I just like drag it off the screen so I don't have to see you, and I just look at myself.
You do look at yourself, don't you? I do. Like, if we're being honest, we look at ourselves.
Yeah,
for
I totally
sure.
do. I'm
good.
Like, change angles, the lighting.
That's right. That's a good looking hat too. You got a new hat. It looks like. Just
Thanks to
yesterday.
Brecken.
I wish you guys would have bought some stuff at the store today. What's up with that? Like, we opened the store and nobody bought a single thing. That's on us, though. You guys can laugh. It's okay. Like, you can make some
Everyone's
noise.
like all quiet.
Yeah, you guys can make some noise. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I don't know how many questions we have, but we'll go for about an hour. And so we've already got a line of guys here. If you're just listening, guys have lined up to the microphone. So we'll do our best to answer some questions for you. Just remember, our answers are really just dependent on how good your questions are. So if you get bad answers, it's probably just a bad question. It has nothing to do with us at all.
Yeah, take ownership.
That's a joke, by the way. So you look very serious, Daryl. So it's okay.
You know what we need? We need like someone with a sign that says like laugh.
Applause.
Yeah,
applause
there you go.
now. Yeah.
Maybe I'll like a little shake here or something. Yeah.
All right, go ahead, brother. What's your question?
So we talked a lot about, having the passion in your, my brain just went blank, in your plan. How much do you need of that in your quarterly battle plan?
Passion in it.
Passion. So you say passion in your plan, just your life in general, you're saying, relative to how much that passion should be in your battle plan?
My brain went blank, like I said.
Your
I can't
vision
think of the
of your
vision,
battle plan?
The passion in your vision. How much of that passion do you need to have in your quarterly battle plan as well?
For me, I would say enough just to drive you towards the vision. Because sometimes you're going to have to do things in life that aren't necessarily exciting, but they will drive you towards your vision. And that's okay. We were actually talking about that yesterday, is sometimes you're just going to have to do work that kind of sucks. But if it's meaningful and it drives you towards something important, then I would say that's all that you need, right? And so the passion is in the vision. You can think about that in the context of doing difficult things, challenging things. Working out in some ways. If you're, unless you're Johnny, like working out, that's not totally always fun to me. It's not enjoyable like other things are. But, I do it because it's important and I'm passionate about being in shape and doing all the other things I want to do. What would you add, though?
I like the word being inspired. Right? I've used this analogy a couple times in Iron Council of your vision needs to move, touch, and inspire you. And inspire I like better than passion because I can do something really hard. I can have grit. It could be miserable. And I could do it in a way that I'm inspired or I'm inspiring. And so I would focus on that. For me, for whatever reason, when I think of being inspired, it's a state of being. So how are you going to do that miserable thing? How are you going to show up in the moment? And I like my vision. We talked about this yesterday, like kind of our visions, like these goals of 5 years out, or are they kind of a statement of being? I lean more in that direction of like, this is how I'm going to show up. Not tomorrow, not in 12 months, today. In the moment, this is how I'm going to be in this world. And if I articulate what that looks like, then I can address anything, right? We talk about this a lot. Guys have a tendency to like latch on to like, well, I'll be happy when, right? I think we said this last time, right? All right, maybe a couple main events ago. It's like, by a raise of hands, right? If my wife did X, we'd have a better marriage. We actually really believe that. And that's not how it works, guys. Like our circumstances don't give us happiness. It's how we show up in spite of our circumstances that give us fulfillment and happiness. And so I really like to focus on how we show up.
So along those lines, I've been thinking about the word, for whatever reason, has been coming to my mind is exceptional, being exceptional. And so this has helped me, is we can take mundane tasks from, maybe it's shaving and getting ready for the day, to the clothes that you wear, to the way that you show up, to the way that you empty the trash. And look, I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect with all those things. Of course, obviously I'm not. especially the shaving. I don't get that part right. So, but if you for me anyways, if I show up and I try to be exceptional at a thing, even if it's a mundane thing, it's just better. Like the example that I use, I think I talked about this last week, is just walking around the property. I'll walk around the property in the morning. That's something I like to do in the morning. And I'll pick up trash. If there's just a little piece of trash, it's like, pick it up. And, that's not real inspiring necessarily, but being exceptional where you are, where your feet are, has helped me to take these mundane tasks that aren't always the most exciting and infuse meaning and purpose into it to make it a more substantive type activity. Pramit, how about you?
Morning, Ryan. Morning, Kip. So my question was about like your chapter 3 of your book, Masculinity Manifesto. You talk about influence, authority, and credibility.
What's this book? Hold on.
It sounds cool. I haven't read it, but I don't know.
What's the book again?
Masculinity Manifesto.
Check.
All right. So in the book, you go into detail about how a man builds influence, authority, and credibility from a point of a business owner or a manager. And I'm currently an employee, so I'm an electrical engineer in the marine space. So I guess I wanted to know more about how a man would build influence and authority specifically. Because credibility, I understand. That comes from what I produce consistently. But if you could speak about the principles of influence and authority from a perspective of an employee.
Yeah. So it's a really good question. So I think you're starting in the right place because you said, you talked about credibility, right? And credibility is where influence and authority start. It's what's required to have influence with other people and the authority. So if we look at it as a hierarchy, and I'm always hesitant to use it this way because I don't ever want it to be misconstrued as somebody's worth as a human. So when I talk about hierarchy, that's not what I'm referring to. But what I am suggesting is that if you're here in the middle where you are as an employee, you have those who are above you, managers, team leaders, bosses, owners, etc. Those individuals in a corporate environment are the ones who bestow or grant authority, right? You don't get authority unless it is bestowed upon you by a higher power or a higher up, some sort of authority that has the right to give it to you. Mm-hmm. Does this make sense?
Yep. Okay.
Influence comes typically, and this isn't exclusive, but influence can come up from the bottom. So you can now, and even, right, get peers, and also above too. Because if you have influence, then that's going to help establish some more authority as well. But when I say influence, it comes from all different places, but you have to have credibility to get both. The authority from the higher and the influence with other people to impact their lives. And so when people, again, I'm not talking about worth as a human, but when people below you in a corporate setting, maybe they're newer employees or they don't have quite the rank that you do within the organization, those people are going to look to you as a leader because you're credible. And if you're not credible, they won't look at you as a leader. And if your higher ups don't find you credible, then they won't give you the authority that you need to be able to act on their behalf in a corporate environment. So it all starts with credibility, guys.
Yeah.
And how do we establish and build credibility? Well, we pick something that we're interested in and we get really, really good at it. That's it. That's all we can do is we can take something that we're interested in. Jiu-jitsu is a great example. We'll bring this in because we always do. Crip's a credible, right? He's credible. He also has some authority. Why? Because he's been given a black belt, or earned, I should say, a black belt by somebody who had the authority to give that to him. And I'm influenced by Kip because he is credible, I realize that, and also he has the authority because I see that black belt around his waist. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Totally.
So you're focused on the right thing. Influence and authority just take time, which kind of sucks, but it's the reality of it.
Can I call out a common pitfall though? So corporations, especially in the corporate world, they're not perfect, right? So by a raise of hands, who's knows someone that's in authority that probably shouldn't be? Right? Every hand in the room went up. So we can't fall to that either. We can't assume that, well, I have the authority, thus I have credibility, or people should listen to me. That's complete bullshit. And even if you're not in a leadership position, don't wait for the authority either, right? I have a team member at our job, one of our senior engineers, amazing. And he's kind of like, man, I wish I was in management because I want the other developers to like listen to me, and so I can guide them because I need that authority to do so. And I'm like, I'll name drop. And I was like, hey, Rhett, like, here's the deal. If they listen to you only because you're in a position of authority, then they're not going to listen to you, right? You have to have the credibility first. And when we do that, what's amazing is people see that, and it's like almost a no-brainer. If we show up powerfully and we have credibility, then it's like, oh, he gets promoted as a leader, and everyone goes, oh, yeah, I kind of just assume he already was, right? Like, this is not a shocking thing, right? Mm-hmm. And the last thing I'd add is that credibility, it's about modeling performance. We talked about this in Iron Council leadership. One of the pillars that we want to focus on in developing leaders in the Iron Council, one of those pillars is modeling. I see this all the time where we might have leaders in the organization that are credible in their tech, or they're knowledgeable, but they're not delivering results. They're not living from or leading from the front. They do not model what it looks like to perform. And if you're not modeling, you're not credible. You might think you are, right? We might tell our stories like, oh, I know this really well or whatever, but you can't deliver. And if you're not delivering, you're not modeling, you're not credible.
And you'll know that because people won't follow you.
Yeah.
Like, if people aren't listening to you, or they aren't asking for your opinion, they aren't asking for your feedback, they aren't following you, then there's some credibility lacking there.
Totally. And so many guys that are in that position, correct me if I'm wrong, are like kind of like, well, I don't know why, it's a social issue, or it's like someone else's fault. And you're like, no, dude, you don't perform. And people don't trust you. 2 levels of trust: character and credibility. I could trust one of you guys. I don't know, maybe. Let me find someone. I'm just joking. I might trust you to watch my kids, right? But I may not trust you to implement a software solution. Why? Because you don't have the skill, right? Those are 2 different things. Okay.
Does that help?
Sorry, we ran with that a little bit.
Nope, lost you on. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Good question.
What's up, guys?
What's up, man?
So,
What's your names, right?
Yeah, names, yeah.
names. I'm Cameron Miller.
Cameron, I'm Kip. Just joking.
Oh, hello, Kip.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So my parents are not really involved with our family. They're not being the grandparents that I'd like them to be. But I'm worried that if I point it out, then they'll come out and visit because I told them to come out and visit. When I don't want that, I want them to want to come out and visit. I want them to want to be involved. So how do I go about getting them to want to be involved in our family?
Well, so there's a couple things I think of here. Is they're not being the grandparents I want them to be. That's very self-centered and egocentric, right? Yeah, maybe it would be good for your kids. I think that's probably something that you're telling yourself. But why is that so important for you?
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a question you should really try to figure out. Why is it important to you? Did you not have that? Is there something that there was wrong when you were younger that you felt would have been more helpful? What are the conversations you're having with your kids about it? But you really have to ask, why is that important? Because at the end of the day, like, there's really nothing I don't think either one of us could say is try this magic formula or use this magic phrase and they'll want to be more involved. Now, there might be some misunderstandings. Maybe, and I don't know, but here's some context. Maybe they don't think you want them to be involved.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just throwing out some different context. Maybe they're thinking to themselves, well, we really want him to be able to lead his family, and we don't want to interject, and we don't want to get in the way, and they're actually doing it from a good place. I don't know. So there are some conversations you can have. Have you ever asked them why they're not more involved with you guys?
No.
And you can ask them that.
Hold on, but why haven't you asked them that?
I guess I'm just.
And we're not trying to pick on you or anything. Like,
yeah.
We're just trying to give you some context of, like let's figure it out. Let's communicate with them and figure out and really see if it's that they don't want to be involved, or who knows? Do they live close to you guys?
No.
So maybe it's a financial constraint. It could be that. And so it's like, well, that's okay. We could do a family call, FaceTime every Monday night. And that might be it. And they don't even think about that.
Yeah, that's true.
But I would say a good place to start is to get on the same page by communication and ask, hey, we really want you to be involved in our lives, in the kids' lives, and from our position, you're not as involved as I thought you would be, or we would like you to be. Is there a reason why? And open up the lines of communication, and you might find out that what you're assuming is not it at all.
Yeah. They have their own stories.
That's true.
Right? Their stories like, our son doesn't even want us around, and he's not loved, and he's not, like, who knows what their story is, right? And so, but I want to be really clear. I can relate to that, right? There's a level of like, is my wife having sex with me more because I asked or because she wants, you know what I mean? Like, there's those little scenarios, and we add meaning to it, but it's going to be an unknown unless you have the conversation. Just one last thought, and this was like a major change in my life. I was at a conference, and I don't even talk about this very often, but we have a really broken relationship with my parents. I have 8 siblings, and one of them, or no, 1.5 of them, is in communication with my mom. That's it. Other ones haven't talked to my mom probably for 20, 30 years, right? Really, like, and they start talking, and then like people start disowning each other. It's like crazy drama, okay? And I'm going to be really frank here. And I was at this conference with my brother, and he goes, how in the hell can you love her? He asked me that question. How can you love her? And some of us, if we ask that question, we might go, well, because of, and then we like list, right? And my answer was, because I choose to. Not based upon whether they visit, not based upon any action, because it's a choice. And I've chose to love them the way they are. Period. And that's a very powerful thing that we can actually teach our kids. Is grandma and grandpa perfect? Is these scenarios perfect? No, they're not. And that's where they are, and we can choose to love them the way they are. Now, I want to be really careful, because he's like, I'm biting at the bit to go like, well, barriers, and is it healthy? And, like, don't ignore those things. Yeah. But it's still a choice. And be really careful based upon the expectations and reasons we choose to love someone. Because what happens when they're not doing that anymore? Right? If your wife chooses not to show up a certain way, what? You're going to throw her out of the boat? Right? Like, really get clear that that's a choice that we have.
I would add, too, the other thing about you were talking about whether they want to, you want them to want to, you don't want them to do it because you asked. Yeah. I would actually challenge that, too. Why does it matter? Well, why does it matter why they do it? Here's another context. But here's another context of it. Let's say they can't or don't want to for whatever reason. We can fill in the blank on that. But they do because you asked. The context that you can take from that is, well, they love me. This isn't something they necessarily want to do, but they're choosing to do it because I asked them to do it. And now they're doing it. And that's actually pretty cool, right? And then from there, it's a matter of rewarding that behavior. So it's like, hey, mom, hey, dad, you know, I just want to say over the past several months, your guys' level of engagement and involvement with us and the kids has been amazing. The kids love it. We love it. It's been so good to get to know you guys. And I'm glad that we are moving in this direction. And now you're rewarding the behavior that you want to see. And they're probably going to do more of it without you having to ask, because they know you value it. But they may not even know that you value it. Again, that goes back to the stories that we're making up. And you have to get to the root of that. And if you're going to make up a story, and you are right now, you're just making something up, you might as well make one up that serves you, right? So a story that serves you is they love me and they want me to be able to lead my family as a man on my own. That's a story that you can make up, and that's a powerful context. But then get to the root of it by talking with them.
Nice.
Good question.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
So my question is, I have a business that's growing, and as it's growing, there's a lot of demands in the business. The transition, though, from business to home is really difficult for me. So demands, I have all these tasks, I have project management, I know I need to do this and this and this. I get home, and I have to slow down and sit with my 6-year-old and read a book, which I do probably once a week rather than every day. So that transition's been really difficult for me. So what are some things to help me get unstuck in that.
I got to be really careful of answering this question because I'm not good at it.
Next question.
I'm just gonna answer this question the way I'm gonna speak to myself, like not to you.
Yeah,
Here's what I need to do better. One thing you said is I need to slow down. I don't think, again, I'm talking to myself more because what you're saying is something I would have said too. I don't think it's slowing down. Like, is it? Does the pace have to slow down? I mean, technically you're not like grinding it out like you would be at work and you're not punching away at the keyboard or doing your tasks or making calls. But can't you be just as actively engaged at home? And I'm saying you, but me, can't I be just as actively engaged at home as I am with work in reading that book? Is reading the book slowing down? I don't think so. It's just shifting priorities. It's just shifting gears a little bit, but you still crank away. I wish we would say that. We say hustle and grind at work. That's the context we always hear of it. It's like hustle and grind at work. Man, what if we learned how to hustle and grind at home just as hard as we do at work? And it's harder because at work we can measure, at least I can, I think most of us would attest to this, that we can measure our performance. It's very easy to do that. Like we can look at number of clients, number of new clients this week, number of receivables, income, debt being paid down, all very quantifiable. But how do we quantify, man, you know, I was a really good father tonight, or I was really a good husband tonight? Man, that's hard to do, which is maybe why we have such an aversion to doing it. Or not an aversion, but we just tend to migrate more heavily towards something that we can quantify. Now, I will say things that have helped me out is having transitionary periods. You work at home, right?
I work in an office.
Yeah.
It's about 15 minutes.
Oh, you work
back
at,
and
okay,
forth.
I thought you worked at home. So that does help. What I would suggest, what do you do on your drive from the office to the house?
I actually started biking, so I have 15 minutes
Okay.
on the bike.
What did you do before?
Just drove.
And what, did you listen to music? Did you listen to podcasts?
Metallica.
Like, what'd you?
AC/DC.
Usually music. I mean,
Music.
it's 2 songs. It's such a short commute.
It's quick, yeah. So I was doing that, and I would listen to self-help stuff on the way home. Bad idea. Bad idea. Because I'd get done with work, and then I'd listen to self-development stuff on the way home, a podcast or whatever, and then I'd be home, and I'm like, self-development mode. It's like, no, husband-father mode. So, guys, I would suggest to you, if you have a commute of any sort and you need to transition from going to business to home, silent time.
Or Inya, right? Is that what you said the other day?
Yeah, but that was
usually
I wasn't going to.
Kenny G.
Do I need to say that our conversations need to stay between us? I just assumed that was a given. Those things are private. I'll let you know if I want you to share those things.
The dance on repeat. Yeah.
No, I would suggest that you take that 15 minutes as a real opportunity for transition. So you start to unplug and unwind from work, and you start to go into father-husband mode. I had a guy that I worked with, and he had a big tree limb right outside of his front door, and he would drive home, and he would get there, and he would literally hang on the tree limb before he went in the house. And he was telling me about this. I asked him why he did that, and he said, it literally is a representation of me hanging my troubles at the door. And so he'd hang on that for 15, 20 seconds or whatever, and then he would go inside, and he had that transitionary period. So the thing I would suggest to me and to all of us is to be very deliberate and intentional about how we're transitioning, and do we have that margin and that buffer to be able to make the switch, because it's different, right? Sometimes my wife will say, are you talking to me or one of your guys? Okay, that's when I know I haven't made the shift, right? I haven't made the shift effectively, and I need to do that. But we need space. We need a margin and buffer to do that. Another good time to do that would be at the end of the day. If you close out at 5 o'clock, maybe learn to close out at 4:30, 4:45, and then you can take that 15 minutes to, hey, you know, here's the things I got done today. Here's the things I need to do tomorrow. Write them down. Get them ready to go. I need to do those things tomorrow. Get them out of your brain, and then just leave them there. Just leave them there. But you have to have a system to be able to do that.
Like leave the laptop at the office. Yeah. Because I'll sometimes pack up really quick. I'm like, I'm going to head home. I'll do that when I get home.
I get the jitters from that.
Yeah. Yeah, bad call.
No, I'm saying that's a real challenge.
Of course.
Totally. Yeah,
well, and also making sure that you're managing expectations with clients too, right? It's like, hey, I'm done at 6 o'clock. This is as far as I'm getting. And realistic expectations about what you can get done. If you're telling a client, hey, that's going to take 2 weeks, but it's going to take 2 months, it's going to take 2 months. So we don't want to tell them 2 weeks, because what do? Bring it home, And then it looms over us
suffers.
while we should be working. I
Yeah.
mean, excuse me, while we should be engaged with our families.
Some of you guys with shorter visions, I keep that in my journal. It's, you know, it's like on a cue card. And the times I've done this the best, I pull into the driveway and I pull that out and I read that, you know, as a state of like, this is how I'm going to walk through that door. A story to reiterate the importance of this. I remember when I first got divorced, it was my first summer with my kids full time. And I had them all summer long. And I worked, at the time I worked from 6 a.m. to probably about 4 or 5 p.m. That was my working window. And then all of a sudden I have these 2 little boys and I'm like, when does daycare start? Like 9, right? And then they're done by like 2. I'm like, this doesn't even add up, right? I can't even get to the office and drop them off. Like, it was the math wasn't working. The schedule was impossible. And so what I would do is I'd go to work late. I'd come home and I'd work. Once, like while we're having dinner, I'm making macaroni and cheese because that's all I know how to cook. And then, you know what I mean? I'm trying to work. And I mean, maybe I don't want to admit this, but at one point I eventually just lost it. And I pinned one of my kids up against a wall and I yelled at him. And he was afraid of me. And I'm like, this is my legacy? Not worth it. So then moving on forward from there, I literally had the mentality of like, come home, man, I'm stressed. I have all this work to do. I have all these things to do. And I'd be like, F it. It doesn't matter. And I'd just play Legos and ignore all the suffering and like all the drama I had. I just pretend it doesn't even exist. And then we get in bed. Once they fall asleep, then I'd be like, shit, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I'd work. But if I try to multitask, man, that shit never works. And every so often I'll try. I'll come home and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to get the house clean and spend quality time with my kid. No, doesn't work. Everyone's pissed off and angry. They start asking, when's mom coming home? You know, not a good experience.
I would also suggest, you said, you know, all the drama, everything else that you have at work. Initially, yes, but if you create some systems and better expectations, this is what professionals don't do with their clients. They don't create good, healthy boundaries with their clients. Yeah. And so if you're always accessible, then you're training your clients to access your time at any time. Mm-hmm. If you say, hey, I'm available in these hours, 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and stick to it. So when they email you or call you at 6, don't answer the phone. And it's going to be really, really uncomfortable at first. But the more you do it, the more they realize, oh, he's serious about that. And they'll start to respect that because you're training them to treat you that way. Yeah. So the drama will ensue because you've encouraged and fostered it.
Juggling it all.
But eventually it will go away if you set, communicate, and uphold healthy boundaries, even with clients. And I know I hear people all the time, oh, but I'll lose business. Oh, but they'll go somewhere else. Maybe, but probably not. If you're respecting yourself, if you respect them, if you do a good job for them, which I know you do, they're not going anywhere else. Mm-hmm. In fact, they're going to appreciate it. If you explain it and you say, hey, look, I'm done at 6. I don't answer emails. I don't answer calls at 6 o'clock because that's my family's time. And you explain that to them, and I'd be like, that's cool. I like that. I would respect that. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
I feel like we should like clap for ourselves, maybe.
For
like
us,
have them
right?
clap.
Because I mean, it's a decent question, great answer.
Yeah. Doesn't that feel way better? We need to incorporate like a clapping soundtrack to like after we answer something.
We've been talking a lot about it this week about the importance of external validation. So making people
the importance
clap
of it and how do we find it?
That's right.
Yeah. Social media, signing up, using that, likes. Right. Yeah. That's what we're about here.
And he is a good dad. So I'm Jeff Gratney. And I see a lot of different organizations with thrusts and purposes, and I can't think of something more powerful than the position that Order of Man is in this culture, in this world. And so it makes me think, of course, I'm a business owner also, and so I'm always looking ahead 2, 3, 5 years. With the Order of Man, with what you can talk about, what is your vision? What do you see happening with Order of Man in 2 years, 5 years? what kind of new ideas or new boundaries to go past?
Yeah, I don't know actually. I feel like at this point I'm along for the ride. I feel like I always have, but I'm always up for the ride too. And I think that's one of the things that's made this pretty exciting for me, is that I don't really have a bunch of expectations about what it could or should be over the next 2 to 5 years. I just organically let it be what it is. And things are going to change, and new technology is going to be available, and situations in my own personal life change and adapt. And, so it's like, I never would have thought that I'd be here. If you would have asked me 4 years ago that we'd be here having this conversation in Maine in a barn that we bought in this property, I would have never imagined that. So why would I plan for that? I think sometimes planning hinders us sometimes. Not always. I mean, we talk a lot about planning, but I think sometimes it can hamstring us and hinder us and keep us from doing something that could be amazing. Like, I remember when we came here, people would say all the time, "Oh, why are you doing that? Adventure." And you just have they'd have this blank look on their face. Why wouldn't I do it? And people will say, "Well, we really wish we could do something like that, but we have friends here, and we have bills and the mortgage and the school and the this and the that." I'm like, yeah, I had all that stuff too. So I guess to wrap it all up, I'm just trying to be open-minded to what this could be. And I see you guys, and I see how powerful it is. I get emails and messages every day in ways that maybe there's a specific podcast that we did. I looked at Kip. It was never a podcast Kip did. I don't know why I looked over at Kip.
Those messages only come to me.
But no, I mean, I hear how it's helped relationships or helped personal issues that people are dealing with, and that's enough for me. I just want more of that, and I don't really know where it's going to go.
Okay.
But I'm open to it.
You're so good at this, by the way.
What do you mean?
Well,
Please continue to
No,
elaborate.
yeah.
Please do elaborate.
The focus of the weekend. Yeah. Next year's main event, validation was what it's called. No, this is like a superpower of yours. I've always thought this was so interesting, where you're just kind of like, no expectation, like, hey, I'm going to take advantage of opportunity when it shows up, right? And see where it goes, and you're content with that. I overanalyze, and I'll be like, well, if it doesn't look this way, then it's failing or it's not succeeding, and I'll overmap it and almost force my will upon it to the extent that if it doesn't happen, then something's wrong. And you're really good at this. And we were kind of talking about this in jiu-jitsu yesterday, right? It's like we prepare ourselves with skill and capability, so when opportunity presents itself, we take advantage of it. But sometimes what's outside of our realm of control, why try to dictate what that is? Because it's outside your realm of control. So let opportunity create itself, and then be in a position to take advantage of it when it shows up. And I just think you're really good at it. I like your shirt, by the way.
I do appreciate both the compliments. Yeah. And I would say I just think life's more exciting that way. It's just more exciting. It's like, I can't really think of anything I've done that if it didn't work out, I wouldn't be able to recover from. Like, we're not talking about brain surgery here. Like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We lose some money, we lose some time, we learn some
And maybe
some
I
things.
could add a little more, like trends. Any trends, excuse me, trends that you see, or a hot spot in men's topics, men's issues?
I mean, you're part of the trend right now. The trend is men need to get together face to face, shoulder to shoulder, and have more conversations. Now, Absolutely. I've talked a lot about it this weekend, is not talking about all the things that are going wonderful in your life, because we do that by default. I don't have to extract that from anybody. But what we do need to talk about is all the shit that's going on in our lives. And I told you guys, and I'll say it because this is going to be in the podcast, and there's going to be a lot of people who listen. I had a conversation about some of my own personal issues that I'm going through, and I talked to a friend about it. I confided in him, and he confided in me and shared a little bit about his personal story. And I was blown away. I felt so bad for him. I honestly, I felt so bad for him. He was going through the same thing, similar to what I've been going through. And I was like, man, why didn't you tell me that? And he's like, yeah, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, oh, yeah. We all have these problems, and nobody's talking about it. It's our ego and our arrogance and our pride, and it's getting in the way. And now we're talking about the game and the weather and how great the business is and how wonderful your wife and kids are doing. None of that's true. Like, how many of you are struggling in some way in your relationship right now? In some way, to some degree. I mean, like, that's 80% of the hands. How many of you are dealing with some sort of medical condition that you haven't had to deal with over the past, maybe even in the last 3 to 5 years? Okay, that's about what, half of the hands? How many of you have had problems with either your finances or your business in the past 3 years? I mean, like, and then if I ask all of you guys, and I'm not trying to knock on you here because I would have fallen in for the same thing. If I say, how's the business? You'd say, it's pretty good. Really?
Yeah.
Well, you just raised your
Super
hand and told me
busy.
it's not.
Yeah.
And I'd say, how's your wife doing? Oh, man, it's amazing. Marriage is great. We're going to be, 10 years coming up. It's so awesome.
We're going on 6 months of not having sex. It's awesome.
Right? Or how's the family? How's your kids? Oh, they're great. Well, actually, they're not great. Little Timmy's vaping at school, and he's about to get kicked out of school. And Cindy's having sex with her boyfriend, and we're not talking about it. It's like, what? I don't understand. I wish we would talk about it. And that's the trend, is that we learn to talk more about those things so I can tell you if I've gone through it, hey, man, here's what I've gone through. Or maybe it's just putting my arm around you and saying, bro, I love you. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kip likes that. That's great. He just wants me to choke him out. Or maybe it's like, hey, you're screwing up. You're screwing up. Like, it's different for different people, but I wish more of us talked about that. And I'm going to be on a crusade to make sure we do.
Yeah. And what's ironic is that's not going to be available until we lead and we go first and we open up the conversation. Like, you can't sit back and like, well, I'm going to wait until Ryan opens up and then I'll open up, right? You guys know this. We have a lot of battle team leaders in the Iron Council here, right? If your team's being superficial and not very authentic, what do you need to do as a team lead? Show up on the call, be authentic, be humble, start sharing, showing them, right, what it looks like to lead from the front. And this is not just an order of man thing, right? Like, I get pissed off when I think about church. Man, that's superficial, right? We always talk about, like, sometimes in church and men's groups where I was like, hey, how do we be better as men? And it's all hypothetical, 30,000 view of what we need to be doing. But no one's raising their hand saying, hey, you know what? I have a problem with pornography. Let's talk about that. Well, shit, no one wants to touch that, right? Why? We should be doing that.
Especially if we're all dealing with the same issues. We all are. All of us are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're all hiding from it. We're going to fix that.
Should we clap or? Just joking.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Next question. Oh, wait, no,
Generally ready?
The guy after you. Oh.
Next.
Nice to meet you guys, Ryan, Kip. On the topic of problems, Ryan, you and I briefly talked about this at the immersion camp. My brother has a bad gambling addiction, and I've put a lot of resources into helping him out, and we kind of stalled out. He's not really engaged, and so I've kind of stepped back. So my question is, when do you know that you've put enough effort in and it's time to kind of step back and let him sort it out for himself?
What more is there can you do that he would respond to?
Well, his response is he will shut down. If I reach out to him, text messages, calls, he'll just shut down.
Okay,
he won't answer.
He doesn't want the accountability.
So,
yeah.
So knowing that, how much longer should you continue to reach out and talk to him about it?
Yeah, that's really the question. Right?
0. Because it's actually harmful. Not
to
harmful.
your relationship.
It's
right.
No, I'm not even saying that.
Good or threat.
I mean, it could. Yeah, definitely. It could. I'm not. That's not what I'm going to say. It's producing the opposite result. You're pushing him away. And so you're at the point now where I think, if based on our limited conversation, where there's not much more you can do related to gambling, because when you bring it up, he pushes away from it, and now you're just chasing him. Let me give you an example. So this morning, Taylor and I were driving up the road, and we saw a bunch of turkeys down here. And I'm like, let's go grab the gun. Let's
Not
go get a
you
turkey.
guys, like actual turkeys.
Actual turkeys. So Taylor and myself, and I grabbed Brecken, and we go out there, and I said, hey, Taylor, why don't you go that way? I'll go the other way, and you drive him and push him towards me. So he did. He was up on the hill. He pushed him down towards me where me and Brecken were, and we heard him clucking. We heard the turkeys clucking, so me and Brecken are just hunkered down waiting for him to come into us. And we didn't see anything. I guess they must have saw us or winded us or something and just went around us, and we didn't see him. So Taylor comes down, and we're thinking about what we should do, and we're like, well, let's just follow him. Why? Like, the more that we follow, they're just going to push him further and further. Like, that's not going to happen. We need to get out in front of them. So that's a little bit about what's happening. But I can tell you what you can do. You can just call him and say, hey, man, like, you want to go catch the game tonight?
Yeah, the biggest progress we made was when I got him to meet up with me, and we had a lot of progress.
What do you mean by progress?
We had a lot of good conversations. We had
About
a lot of
what?
About the vision of what he wanted for his life and how he wanted to show up.
Okay.
And then then there was no follow-up. No answering of phone calls, no answering of text messages.
Why do you think that is?
Not sure.
Do you think that he enjoyed the conversations you guys had?
That was my perception.
Seemed like he did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I were in your shoes, Johnny, what I would do is I would be the best brother that I could be without worrying about fixing him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man, let's go catch the game. No, I don't want to talk about your life vision. Like, so I just told you guys, let's get deep and talk about this stuff. and now I'm telling you, like, with him, I probably would say, hey, let's go watch the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't talk about gambling. Don't talk about life's problems. Don't talk about his vision. Just talk about how great the game was, or how great these seats are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like instead of going that route, just be a brother to him, and let him come when he's ready. Yeah. And maybe he will, and maybe he won't, which sucks if he doesn't. But
good resource, The Anatomy of Peace or The Outward Mindset. Both of those books are really great. And that pyramid, which you need to start at the bottom. The top of the pyramid is influence and correction. Those are the last things we do. Mm-hmm. The first things that you do is have a credible relationship with them. Actually, the first thing is actually change your mindset. That your brother is whole and complete and perfect exactly the way he is.
Shifting your mindset.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's love him. That's it. And then eventually you can get to a place of influence. And I know this book. Why? Because this was my relationship with my stepson, right? Kiabe, you need to get your life in order. You need to do and show up a certain way. Then we can have a good relationship. And from his perspective, what does that look like? You don't love me. You don't see me. You're trying to change me. And then you'll have a relationship with me? Right? It doesn't feel like love and acceptance and someone that values you if it's based upon condition, right? Mm. And so I'm just reiterating the same thing that Ryan just said. It's like that relationship is way more important than the correction. That might open up later. And the last thought is, I'm going to slaughter the quote, right? But the quote is like, you can't heal someone that's unwilling to give up what's making them sick. And he's just not there yet. And a powerful way I like to look at it is we're all on a path, man. There's no destination, but the path is powerful. And I actually think eventually all of us will learn exactly what we need to learn. Some of us are going to take the hard path up the mountain and it's going to be miserable or whatever, but we'll all eventually figure it out.
Yeah.
And he's got to figure out on his way. And the most powerful thing that you could do is let him know that, man, I love you as a brother. And I am here for you.
Thank you.
See, now I feel cheesy. You're only clapping because I asked you to.
And I would say, why does it matter? We're still getting the claps.
Hey, Ryan. Hey, Kip. Manny. I'm 45, father, husband. And life has been going very well for me. Until we got hit with an unforeseen challenge. My mom, who's young, in her late 60s, was diagnosed with dementia. And she's deteriorating quite quickly. and it's taking a toll on my dad. So my question for you guys is, how do I execute my duties as a man, specifically as a son, without having any impact or with having only a minimal impact on the quality of what I need to deliver for my daughter and for my wife?
What do you feel like you need to do with your folks?
Well, I'm an only child.
Okay.
So they don't have a lot of support. They also live in a city where there's no other family members around.
How far away are they?
They're about a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not a long trip, but it's not an insubstantial amount of travel. And really what they need right now is my time. And my dad specifically needs help organizing things at home, taking care of bills, making sure that the house is, squared away. So right now it's a time thing, but it's also an emotional bandwidth thing.
Of course.
Because the stress can make me a little short with my wife or with my daughter, and I don't want to have a negative impact on that part of my life, especially because with my daughter it's always gone really well. With my wife, it's improved substantially over the past year, and I don't want to backpedal from the improvements that have.
How old is your daughter?
She's 9.
Oh, I think you said that. How's the relationship with your parents?
It's good. They were great parents. I'm very fortunate. My mom, she still has the cognitive ability to have a reasonable conversation most of the time.
Yeah.
She forgets a lot of things and forgets who people are sometimes.
Yeah.
And emotionally, that takes a big toll on me.
How I can understand that for sure. How is the relationship? What I meant was your wife and daughter with your parents.
Oh, amazing. They cared for my daughter the first 5 years of her life while I was getting my business up and running and my wife was working. So they had a very close relationship.
Okay.
Right.
That said, now that you mention it, my daughter is super disappointed, gets very upset when grandma doesn't remember things that happen in her life.
Yeah.
And she is at the age where she's starting to understand that it's a mental thing
It's not a
that
personal
grandma
thing.
can't control. Right. It's not personal.
I'm asking these questions because I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for you to get your wife and daughter involved so that you don't have to be, hey, here I am, I got to travel 5 hours north or south every week and be with my folks, and instead turn it into a trip, where your daughter and your wife come with you and you're up there for 3 days and maybe you get a nice hotel and you do some things and you spend one day with your parents and then have your daughter who's 9 come over and help. Maybe it's vacuuming, maybe it's dusting up the place, and your wife's helping you with the organization and bills. It sounds like the relationship has a foundation, and it might be an opportunity for you to have some really good conversations on the road with your daughter about what's going on with your mom, helping her get involved, helping her learn to serve, helping see you as a son, as her father, but a son who loves, so she can model that behavior like Kip was saying. But man, I think there's some great opportunities actually here to make this a family effort, not a manny effort.
Totally.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can do that in all sorts of things, is stack these things up, right? So you're not having to divide all of your attention, as you can stack them up. Like, I want to be a good son and I want to be a good father. Are they mutually exclusive? They don't have to be. And this is an opportunity where you can stack those things up and serve both. You can serve your parents and you can serve your daughter and wife at the same time.
So follow-up question on that. I've tried that. And you're right. It is a great opportunity for me to model behavior and for them to get in there and also feel fulfilled by helping the family. The thing is, after 2 or 3 days, it gets stressful for them. My wife's a trooper. She'll go out there even without me to handle things when, shit's going sideways sometimes.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to do that, but she willingly does that and volunteers to do that, and I appreciate it. And my daughter works really hard to do my daughter calls them the brain exercises with grandma.
Okay.
After 2 or 3 days, it takes an emotional toll on them, and they're willing to go on, but I feel like I have to step in and say, guys, we need to go because this is starting to impact you guys. And then they agree,
I think that's fair. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think that's fair. I don't understand the problem.
The problem is I don't want them to be impacted at all.
Well, they're going to.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to deal with hard things in life. Like, they're going to have other situations where they're going to have to deal with people that, have medical issues, or people they don't even like. They're going to have to do things that aren't always fun. Your daughter's going to have to do that. So, like, at that point, I think you're kind of shielding them from opportunity. Yeah. Hey, I know this isn't always the greatest, so let's put some healthy boundaries in place. And by the way, you're saying I don't want them to be impacted at all. Okay, well then don't bring them. Is that going to impact them? Yeah, because you're gone. So they're going to be impacted either way. So I think it's better that they're with you. And yes, there has to be some constraints. You can't spend a week out there and have your 9-year-old daughter babysit your mother.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be insensitive about that.
Of course.
But 2 days, I think, yeah, if that's her limit, great. That's an opportunity for her to exercise some fortitude, some mental resiliency, service, a lot of great things. And yeah, they're going to be impacted and good.
Yeah. We have a tendency to do this as men, right? Where we think like, well, my childhood was difficult, and so I'm gonna give my kids the life I never had, right? Well, the really hard times in my life where I had shit, those were the best years, guys. Right? Some of the hardest times of my life and in my childhood were the memories that we created as a family. Those were the things that actually mattered, not the absence of like difficulty. And I know, and it's not easy, right? But mark my word, right? You continue this, you establish the boundaries with your daughter, she's going to look back at this, and this is a time where you guys banded together as a family, you did something hard, you knew it was the right thing, and she's going to be better for it. You're going to be closer as a family by enduring together for something. We need to be, and there's a dichotomy there, right? We don't want to do it too much, but we also have to realize, like, this is good. I don't know, difficult times in your life, like raise a hand. Like, those difficult times as a kid, were those the most memorable for some of you guys? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I've had welfare Christmases. You know what I mean? Those were the best ones, and I didn't even get a freaking toy. I got like a quilt or something. It's like, those are some of the best times of my life.
Now that you mention it, Kip, when I was a kid, I observed my mom take care of her sick mom and model those behaviors, and now I see the opportunity for my daughter to learn as well. Yeah. So,
and there are cool things that you can do. Like, you're talking about a 5-hour drive. Maybe you take the family on a detour on the way up there one time and see off the side of the road, the world's biggest ball of yarn or something. I don't know, like, where they always have those like exhibits on, like, go do that.
Or flying
right?
dishwashers or whatever, right?
The thermometer in Barstow.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And you go make a fun thing out of it, right? Yep. Or, hey, maybe your daughter, she really likes to go to the park. The park, like, isn't my favorite place. That kind of just sit at the park. But the kids like it. So I'm like, all right, cool. We'll go to the park, Or your daughter's 9. She could probably stay with grandpa, I imagine, for an evening for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And so you could take your wife out to, on the town or to a restaurant that isn't available where you guys are. And so you can do other things that alleviate some of that stress.
Yeah. Add some fun to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
You bet, brother. Yeah, you bet.
By the way, isn't herding turkeys like illegal? And you just said that you guys herded turkeys on the...
It depends on the season.
Oh, okay.
So in the fall, you can do it differently than you can do in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
If I'm
wrong, wasn't sure if we needed to edit that out.
If I'm wrong, we can cut that part out.
Yeah. Okay.
What's up, guys? In our group, in our cabin, we've been talking a lot about another trend, kind of like you guys were talking about. A trend we see right now is that there's a lot of men roaming around our culture that are, I would say, unfinished, uninitiated, immature to some degree. And so we see a lot here in the Iron Council where we're trying to work on how are we initiating men or boys into men. And I know, obviously, this is something you do talk about, but I think as we've been buzzing on it, we'd just love to hear from you guys. What are some practical, nitty-gritty ways that we as men, we in the Iron Council, the Order of Man, can start impacting our culture, our families, initiating, very specifically working to initiate our sons, but not just our sons. I feel like our communities and our culture.
Yeah, I generally what I would say is get them involved in difficult and challenging things and do it as a team. I mean, you guys have such a good team culture within the Iron Council and what you guys have done here, so you understand how powerful that is. It could be as simple as doing a Spartan race together. You know, like those things are like, there's so many different things, or running a 5K or running a marathon, something that's physically demanding, something that requires time, attention, focus, preparation, something that has a definitive end, like this has to be completed.
Delayed gratification to get there.
Yeah. And there's so many opportunities like that, or bringing them to a legacy event or even event, you know, main event like this. But there are so many opportunities that we just need to tap into. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We just need to tap into them. And so it might be 4 or 5 of you guys as men who have sons, and you say, hey guys, we're going to get together. We're going to do a Spartan race in 2 months. Or I have a friend that does, Steve Weatherford, he does Man Academy, I think is what he calls it. But it's fathers and sons, and they get together every Saturday for like 8 weeks. And they go through some physical training, physical programming, mindset coaching, things like that. Again, delayed gratification, start and finish, tasks they need to complete along the way,
confidence building.
I mean, these are all things that are really easy to implement. They're already available, and you just need to pay a little bit of money just for a registration fee. Like, that's the low-hanging fruit.
True.
A lot of times we think, well, what can we create? Well, we can get to that, but now let's just tap into what is already available and what we can harness immediately.
One thing I think we overlook a lot is surrounding our boys with men.
Yeah, that's really good.
Like, I have guys in my life that will call out my own kids, right? And it's ironic, they don't even have to be close, right? I have a good friend in New York that we became friends when I lived in New York. When he comes out, he'll be like, hey, Kiavi, let's go for a drive, right? And he's like, so what's going on? What's going on in your life? He's giving him advice. His son, when he went off to college, he's like swung by the house to make sure to say goodbye before he moved out of state because he was living in Utah. Like, you need to have men, not just men around you, but men that are like, no, this boy's, yeah, I'm influencing this boy. I'm intentionally influencing this boy. Right. Right? And I don't even know if you've given me the approval to do this, but like, I kind of feel that way with Brecken a little bit and Otto. Like, when I see them, I want to influence them. How are things going, right? Because we need to band together, right, with these boys as well. And they need to see it from multiple angles and have multiple men in their lives where they can see what does it look like to be a man. And you can do that by making sure that we surround ourselves with that kind of high caliber individuals, such as myself.
And also get out of the way too.
Right.
Yeah. Like when you see that taking place, is just get out of the way and let that happen.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
don't shield them from the coach or whatever.
I mean, how many times have I seen my kids out here playing basketball with one of you guys? I don't go play. I don't need to interject. I play basketball with all the time. They've heard all my stuff. So, cool. Let them hear from somebody else. I trust you guys that you're hopefully telling them the right things and leading them on the right path. If you're not, there might be some course correction along the way. But at the end of the day, like, that's another opportunity for them to get a look from another man that I have at least some level of respect for. You're here. You're investing in yourself. So
if Brecken's out there like vaping, it's probably because like one of you guys.
Does that help, man?
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, brother. So it looks like we have three people in line right now. So I think we'll probably, Chris, we got about 10 minutes. So we'll take you three and then we'll wrap things up today.
All right. Good morning, guys.
What's up,
Got a
Tony?
business question for you.
Okay.
So over the last couple of years, we've made a lot of personal changes, opening a business, and I've made a career change. And so we've got an opportunity to expand a business that my wife has, and we're looking into that. The phrase that comes to me is that I don't want to outpunt my coverage. In other words, I don't want to expand too far, too fast, anything like that. And so I was talking to Alan Placer the other night, and he was saying, you know, that the more successful that you are, the more opportunities you're going to have. So, you know, you're going to have more open doors to step through. So how do you know how far to step, how far to go, what doors to go through? And we've kind of been touching on it with some of the questions, you know, with Order of Man and things like that, but thoughts on that?
How do you know? I would say Alan's probably better to answer this than me. I don't know, Kip, about you, but I haven't really expanded that way. And this is actually part of my answer is you're asking the wrong person, because I haven't done this, right? I haven't opened another location necessarily, right? I've expanded and I've grown and I've leveraged and done these things, and we came out here, and there's things like that that I've done. But I think the answer to the question is to find people who have done it successfully, and then you can ask them that so they can tell you, okay, well, here's what that entails. Because a lot of the times we just see the silver lining of it, like, oh, another location, more money, more people served. Yes, and more debt, more overhead, more customers, more complaints, more employees, more overhead. And so we don't see that all the time, but somebody who's gone through that will. So I think that goes back to one of the first questions we had today is the credibility question. I'm not a credible resource on that. So I don't feel comfortable giving you the answer to that because I don't know. I don't know what it is. I will say that there are things that you can do to test the waters a little bit. So let me give you an example, because it's a bakery, right? Yeah. Right. So you've got the bakery. Maybe a way to look at it is to find a friend who has some sort of, maybe it's a coffee shop. I'm just throwing out ideas. And instead of opening a new location, maybe you see if there's a way for you to partner where you actually sell your products in that coffee shop so that you're at least putting your foot in the water to having another location without all of the risk and all of the overhead of it. And that allows you to experiment with a little bit. And you might say, oh, this is pretty good. I think we can go a little further. Or you might say, yeah, we don't like that at all, and scale back. So maybe there's ways that you can move in the direction without taking on all of the risk associated with it. It's going to require some creativity, but I think there's some opportunity there.
Let me give you some examples of what he just said, and then one other additional thought. So for instance, if I'm running a consulting firm and I want to ramp up that team twice as high, what can I do as like an interim scenario? Hire contractors, backfill the overflow of work. Oh, I'm keeping these contractors so busy that now I can stop hiring them as contractors and backfill them with individuals on payroll. No risk, right? Because if they're not busy, I don't use them as contractors, right? And so that's kind of what that no risk is in the selling the bakery products somewhere else location, right? The other thing is break down the numbers. I literally, like, from a business perspective, and you should know this, in my opinion, you should know how many leads turn into opportunities, what's your close rate on opportunities, to gross profit, to how many resources required to fulfill. So the answer is, can we get enough work downstream? Well, then do the math. How much lead gen do we need to do? Like what marketing and sales is happening today to give you the work you have now, and do the math and see the consistency of that so you can ramp up that to prove that you can have that success downstream. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Now, it's not an exact scenario. I don't know if that changes in the world of bakeries, right? But in the world of consulting, I can predict if I get 100 more leads, that will translate to this much more profit, which means I need this many more resources. It's exact, almost.
Yeah.
Right.
So
there's also opportunities, I would imagine. I don't know the business, but for you to license your branding, for you to license your products, your recipes to, let's say, a coffee shop where they're actually participating in some of the financial incentives and gains. So they're doing it with your products, and you're not having to have all of that overhead as well. I'm just trying to think creative. I don't know if that's a solution, but I'm just trying to think creatively about some ways without having to go all in on a second location.
Yeah. Well, what it is so the location that we have pretty much outgrown it. I mean, we're maxed out.
Yeah.
We can't even fit all the equipment that we need. And so the business next door is moving out. And so we can take that over, take the wall out, and basically double our footprint. But we're doubling our overhead then. You're doubling your rent, you're doubling utilities.
Can you pay for the additional overhead with the current profits that you have today?
No.
So what would change? Why would having a bigger location drive more traffic into the store?
We want to add more products, and we actually want to expand the menu.
But products that you don't know have sold or not yet.
For example, one of the things we want to do is we want to open up and start doing lunches and dinner, pizza, all those things. And there are no pizza places anywhere within 20-minute drive of us, believe it or not. And you can't even get it delivered out there. Yeah. So we would be like the only one in the area, you know. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Which could be good and bad, right? It's like, oh, no one wants pizza, right? Like no one's addressed this need yet. So sometimes we think it's the great idea that's the moneymaker. Sometimes it's just doing it better, but someone already tried out the market. Do you get what I'm saying? And I don't want to be a negative town here. But
or are there ways to sell pizza now?
Validate.
You know, to maybe not all the pizza you want to sell or all the flavors and all the design, everything. But there is a way to do it now to see if people are interested in pizza and if it'll drive new traffic in.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm thinking about like pastries. If you offered a lemon meringue instead of a cherry, like I don't think that's going to drive somebody else in who wouldn't have come in otherwise.
Right.
But now you're talking about an entirely new product that might drive new traffic.
And the unfortunate part for you is you're up against the wall, right? Available space. If we don't capitalize on now, we're gonna lose this opportunity. And I'm always like, I don't know. I'm emotional when I get that way, right? Because then I'm like, no, I'm being forced to make a decision, and I wouldn't make this decision because I'm not ready now. And now I'm gonna make a call strategically based upon something outside my realm of control. I'm like, I'm out. That's usually how I probably overreact, right? So, but that's an emotional state, so don't listen to me. But I don't like that.
I hope that
right?
helps,
because
man.
what's driving your decision, right? The availability of something that, you know, like maybe you weren't, like if that space wasn't available, would you be having this conversation?
We would potentially be looking for another place.
Okay.
Just because of our space restrictions, that we have grown enough that, you know, for example, I mean, we're doing wedding cakes, we're doing all kinds of different things. And so half the time they're using the tables in the dining room just to hold the product because of how many orders they have, that we're waiting on the people to pick the orders up, things like that, you know. And so we're like maxed out.
Well, that's a little bit different than
so,
you need the space.
You know, yeah, you know, but cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
guys.
No clapping for that one.
Yeah.
Wasn't
a very good hand.
We should have just went with don't ask us. Let's move on. We like to hear ourselves talk. All right.
Quincy Fry. So 2 days ago, we had a really powerful and impactful speech given to us on how men hide behind armor, and that armor of authority and title and rank, and we use that to hide our true and vulnerable selves, the weakness or whatever. And it's something I find myself struggling with a lot, as we have to learn to take that off. And when I imagine myself taking that off, I don't see anything under it. Like,
without that, you don't have an identity.
Correct. So what would be your advice or recommendation to any other men who don't see any substance beneath that armor?
So what do you tie your identity up in right now?
Work.
Okay, fair. What are you good at work?
Leading.
Leading?
Yeah.
What specifically about leading?
Connecting with my persons and making sure my team is able to accomplish and going through and doing those things.
And why is that important to you? Connecting with your...
Because it's right.
What makes it right? That's not a trick question.
Yeah,
like,
I don't have the answer to that.
What feels right about it to you? Does it just feel good?
Yeah, it's like the right thing to do, because not enough people do it. They look at it and they try to gain something from it, instead of trying to accomplish what needs to be done in the way that helps the other person grow.
Okay. So what do you do for work?
I'm a director at a tech company.
A tech company. If you got fired today, your boss called you up and fired you, would that leadership stuff mean less to you?
Absolutely not.
So is your identity contingent upon your work?
No, but it's a title, because I can walk into a room with that title on and know that that is also prior military, 20 years of it. So
yeah, so the title...
I'm used to the rank and the title being an armor that when I take it off and here it means absolutely nothing.
But let me ask you this. if you had this armor on, right? You're talking about your rank, your title, but it was weak armor. Is it really armor? Like, what if you thought it was this like steel breastplate and really it was just a thin piece of silk over your chest?
Smoke and mirrors, yeah.
Because that's actually what it is. Like, you think you're safe, like, to take military terms, concealment versus cover, right? So genuine armor would be what? Cover. Concealment would be that little piece of silk that you're hiding behind. It's not going to do anything. And I feel a little bit, just based on this limited conversation, that you think you have a armor on, but it's just this silk cloth that's could go away at any minute. But what you're talking about on a deeper level, about, hey, leading, showing empathy, Kip said, caring about other people, because it's the right thing to do. And it will always be the right thing to do, regardless of your leadership title, regardless of your role or your rank. It will always be the right thing to do. So I could strip everything else away from you, your rank, your title, your income, everything. And would that leadership still be important to you?
Absolutely.
That's the identity. That's the shield, or the armor, I should say. Not the silk piece of cloth that you're wearing right now. That's the armor. That can't be taken away from you. I cannot diminish that. What else can't I diminish? Things that you value, characteristics, virtues.
Integrity.
That's a
yeah.
right? Virtue, yeah. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, think about what virtues are important to you, and that becomes your identity.
Yeah. And if we're having a conversation, I get to know you, maybe at first you're like, oh, I'm an IT director, and I'm like, ooh, impressive. And then once I get to know you, regardless of that title, I don't give a shit about that. Like, how many of us have met someone, like, or know of someone superficially, right? And then we get to know them, and you're kind of like, the guy's kind of an asshole. Right? I didn't even like that guy. But I liked him when I didn't know him, right? I liked his pretend armor. That's the reality, is we have such superficial relationships that sometimes we think so highly of people, and then we get to know someone and we're like, yeah, he's just a dude. He's actually not that impressive. Or we get to know someone that's like, doesn't have the superficial title, and you're like, I love that guy. That guy is solid. He shows up in a really powerful way. It's who we are being that defines us. Not man's titles, not superficial bullshit. It's actually how we show up, and it's more deeper than that.
A question that I get quite often is, if you weren't doing order of man, what else would you be doing? That doesn't even compute. That question is, you might as well say that in a foreign language. This thing could burn to the ground today. Order of man, this barn, like literally and figuratively, everything could just burn to the ground. And you know what? I'd still be doing the same thing tomorrow. I'd wake up, I'd be getting men together, I'd be having conversations about how we can improve and improve our lives and improve the lives of the people around us. I would do all of that. So I know that that's my identity. It's not the barn. This barn can burn down. It's not order of man. Somebody could sue me, and my business could go away. It's not that. It's what's underneath it. That's what we need to hang our hat on, not the facade of a title. A title goes away, man.
I do like the fact that you ask those questions, though, because some of us may not know what those are, right? Like, what are our superpowers, right? Like, what is that identity? And I think it's really important that we do know what those are, that we figure out where our strengths are and kind of latch and grow into them too, right? So I'm just hesitant, right? Like, I think some of us might be like, all I have is a title. I don't know what I'm good at. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's really important that we figure that out.
Well, we have those titles for a reason, right? Simon Sinek, I think, talks about it in Start With Why, but you could break down what you're good at, and I can do that. You know, I'm great at communicating. I'm a fairly good communicator. I'm pretty good at taking ideas and concepts and sharing them in a way that resonates with people. I'm good at getting people together. Empowering others, I feel like I'm pretty decent at that.
Yeah, marketing.
And
Yeah,
all of that
critical
could
thinking,
be
yeah.
done anywhere. It doesn't have to be here with Order of Man. It is, because I find value in this, but I could do that anywhere, right? No, those are the things that never go away. Man's Search for Meaning is another good one, if you haven't read that. I mean, think about what that man went through. I mean, the most horrific, unimaginable scenario. Has everybody read that book, Man's Search for Meaning? If you haven't, read it. And yet he found meaning even in that suffering. Wild. Wild. Does that help?
Yes, sir.
All right, brother.
Hey, thanks for sharing.
And if you want to talk more about it afterwards, I'm up for it.
Morning, guys.
What's up, man?
My name's Carrick Meineke.
Good to see you here.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. I have a question. I often have problems with my anger when I'm dealing with my family, and it's not the legacy I want to leave for my children. I am on one level seeking professional help for it. It's also a part of my connection quadrant in my battle plan. I was wondering if you guys have struggled with this, and what tactics you have used to try to overcome the problem, if you have.
This is something I struggle with. Anger, not just directed towards my family, but directed towards things that aren't going the way I want them to go. Mm-hmm. And my family doesn't always do that. Mm-hmm. My kids don't always do what I think they should do, mm-hmm. right? Or the business doesn't always. And so it makes me angry. And then what do? I try to control it, right? Like control, dominate, manipulate, get it to go where I want it to go. Mm. That's the root of my issue. And even if I were to go deeper than that, it would be, where does this stem from? Like, where does the anger stem from? It's usually an insecurity, right? And so an insecurity I have is an abandonment insecurity. And and that has also turned into a self-worth insecurity, right? Because people leave, and then they're leaving because of me. Like, I'm not worthy. I did something wrong, or I didn't do something I should have done. And so in order to cope with that, I get angry and I try to dominate and control and exercise and exert my will over situations and other people. Mm-hmm. That's hard to come to terms with, and it takes a lot of work. And I'm just trying to work through that now, so that I can let go of that and realize that other people have their autonomy and their control, and they can do things. But coming to that realization about where it comes from has been really, really powerful for me. Okay. And so I think that when you talked about, I think you said you're getting some professional help, some therapy, it sounds like maybe. Yeah. Talk about that with your therapist. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I'm angry. Where does that come from? I'm impatient. Where does that come from? I try to control people. Where does that come from? And that individual, if they're doing their job, should help you explore your past and some of the experiences that you've had in the past. Maybe it's your father or mother left when you were young, or something traumatic happened to you, and then we develop these insecurities, and in order to deal with them, we come up with some coping mechanisms. Mm-hmm. Those are mine. Sounds like you and I might be very similar in that vein. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the rest of the room can relate. I'm not overly aggressive. I'll just stonewall. Mm-hmm. Right. I'll withdraw, and then I'll like wait to see if they love me enough. Mm-hmm. Right, to reach out and fix the problem. Yeah, works really well, by the way. Yeah,
I shout. I don't want.
I don't shout, but it's just as bad, by the way. Mm-hmm. Right, those that are stonewalling, it's just as bad, because what's my wife's interpretation of me not yelling? It's the same interpretation. Mm-hmm. He doesn't care. He doesn't love us, right? Or whatever, right? Mm. And so there's two sides to this, right? Like, so anyone that's like, well, I just shell up and I'm quiet. You're doing the same thing. You're just not using the words, and the body language and everything else is what's sending the same message, right? Mm-hmm. And at least for me, it's always come back down to not just what was the defining moment from my childhood that made me like have some insecurities or whatever, but separating truth from interpretation. Because I can even grab my past and go, oh, maybe I got abandonment from this. What really happened? Actually, did your dad really say, I don't love you, you're a worthless piece of shit? oh no, that was actually my interpretation of him just working. That wasn't even true, right? And just to add to what we're saying is so much of our interpretations of the world, we grab in the past and we just drag it forward into the future and look for evidence that it's true. I would suggest all of us to consider the fact that we would almost rather be right than happy. We'd rather be miserable and, man, I knew it, than actually just be happy. And man, what a miserable experience. And so for at least a lot with my family and with my wife, it's constantly like me getting clear on the interpretation of the scenario. Why am I upset? Well, I'm upset for this reason. Is that true? No, it's not, actually. I'm acting out on my interpretation and not on reality. And that helps. And knowing where it came from, obviously, is a whole other bag, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that work of like that deeper work, it takes a long time.
Yeah. I've been at it for about a year now.
Yeah, it takes a long time. And that's okay. Like continue to go through the process. I would offer these tactical tips right here. Number one, when you start to feel yourself getting angry, then get out of the situation that's making you angry.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's with your wife or with your kids, just get out of the, and you could even explain it to them. Like with your wife is like, hun, I'm getting angry. I'm getting upset about what we're talking about right now. And so I'm going to dismiss myself. I'm going to excuse myself and I'm going to go for a walk or go to the gym, train jiu-jitsu because I know you do. Like whatever your thing is, I'm going to go do that. And then we can revisit this later this evening. You do have to come back and revisit it. You can't do what Kip's talking about and just withdraw completely.
Not a good idea.
This is a difference in our personality. Like so he'll withdraw completely. And I'm like, no, we're not talking about this later. We're talking about it right now.
That was really aggressive.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've had to force myself to say, no. You gotta get out of this. Your voice is getting louder, your pace is picking up, you're slamming the table, you're punching a wall, you're making gestures that are intimidating, or even worse, you're hitting, like no. Get out of the environment. You can come back and revisit it. The other thing that helps me is, I talked about this earlier, is just creating some margin. I know when I'm stressed out, that triggers that for me. When I get stressed, and I get stressed when, I'll tell you a great example. This morning, I was stressed. We were trying to get the store up and running, and the little thing wasn't working, and that was stressing me out, and I was being short with people. Like, not mean, but I was being short. I was starting to realize, nope, this is a problem. What could have solved that problem? Well, I probably could have made sure that was up and running last night. But I didn't do that. We waited to the last minute. So the lesson there is I got to have margin so I don't get myself into stressful situations. And then when I noticed I was getting short with people, put the dang thing away. We can get back to the store later and go do something else.
Okay.
I have to say one more thing. I'm sorry. I have to go last.
You do. You can have the last word.
Just a quick thought. I think in most cases when we are out of integrity, then we will look to collude with others, we'll look to blame, we'll look to find fault in others, period. Like when I go to work and I wasn't really productive and I didn't get the things done that I knew I was going to get done, when I come home, I'm looking to control things more. I think part of that is actually the way I'm feeling about myself because how I showed up in the day. Now, I think some of it's the margin, but the other part is, are you congruent and do you have integrity? When you are living a life of integrity, kind of things don't matter because you actually feel good about how you're showing up in the world. If you don't feel good about how you're showing up in the world, one of two things has to happen. You have to accept the fact that you're out of integrity and you'll restore it, or you have to excuse it. And the excuse usually looks like pointing the finger at someone else to justify your actions.
Okay. Thank you,
That
guys.
help?
Yes, sir.
Right on.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, guys. It's good.
That does feel good.
Yeah, good job getting them to clap. Guys, I appreciate all of you. Obviously, we'll have more questions and thoughts throughout the weekend, so keep those coming. And then those of you who are listening, hopefully that served you guys in some way, a little different format than we normally do.
But fun.
I guess to close this out, I would say, I don't know, what should we, but probably the Battle Ready program.
Yeah.
If you got, and you guys should go through that too, the Battle Ready program. If you haven't done that yet, the 30 days to Battle Ready, it's a free program. It's 17 emails over 30 days, and it's going to work you through a lot of what we talk about with regards to battle planning, but it might help bring some clarity to that as well.
Yeah. And what's the spirit of that? Rise up. Maybe that's the call to action. We need to rise up. Everybody here, I do, you do, we all do. Like well, I don't want to steal the closing remark, but let's rise up.
Why don't you say the closing?
No, it feels awkward. No, I'm not doing it.
No, you want the last word.
No,
so
I don't
go
want
ahead
the
and
last word.
go ahead.
No,
it's going to be silent.
It needs to come from you.
All right. Let's go out there, take action, become the men we were meant to be.